Hey, Astros fans, we got another great edition of the Locked On Astros podcast. We have Jason Bell, who took the Tri-City Valley Cats to the New York Penn League Championship in his managerial debut. And also, he is currently the Assistant Director of Player Development and Minor League Field Coordinator. So what is he looking forward to in spring training? What minor leaguers is he looking forward to working with? We'll talk about this and more on this edition of the Locked On Astros podcast.
Alvarez hits a high drive center field. Veer leans back. This game is turned upside down. There's the runner. Fly ball down the right field line. Tucker comes on. Kyle Tucker. This time they finish the job.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, we're being joined by Jason Bell. He is going to be working with the Astros in a different role this year, Assistant Director, Player Development, Minor League Field Coordinator. We'll ask him exactly what that means in a second. But Jason, where can he find you at?
So my name is Jason Bell. You guys can obviously find me on Twitter, J_Bell_11. Yeah.
All right, so I know that we're looking forward to spring training. Pitchers and catchers are reporting, in 10 days. We're excited about that. Then you have the position players reporting, I believe, on the 21st. Baseball's around the corner. And guys, make sure you keep on tuning in to the Locked On Astros podcast all year round, whether it's the playoffs, whether it's spring training, off season. We're here. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and make us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify. And don't forget to go ahead and check out FanDuel. FanDuel is this great new service that the Locked On is working with, and it's just a great place to go make your bets at. And obviously, it's just a great way to, it's the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Okay, so Jason, thank you for joining the podcast. It's excellent. We're glad to have you on, and thank you for being flexible. I know you're in Florida right now. You're about to be doing a lot of different stuff with the Astros minor league. So what exactly is your role with the Houston Astros?
Yeah, so my role it entails a little bit of everything. First of all, I coordinate spring training. So each element of a minor league spring training day, certain things that are also paired with it called like a mini camp. So a lot of the guys that go over and help out the major league side, for half a game, a full game, and kind of go back and forth. So pretty much put together the day-to-days to build up our players for the regular season. I oversee our managers and development coaches and some of our, other coordinators. And, as the season goes on, I go around each affiliate, trying to make sure that our development plans that are individualized for each player are being executed and, adapt them the way that we want, in a way where, we can always keep growing our players and make them the best version of themselves at the most rapid pace.
That seems like a pretty involved job. I can think of just various industries like around here. There are a lot of people that are in the chemical industry or in the oil and gas field, and you'll have project managers or you'll have plant managers. You'll have site coordinators, things like that. And it sounds like you do a lot of that technical stuff. And that's really important because when you have so many minor leaguers at so many different stages, you've got minor leaguers that are throttling through the system. You've got minor leaguers that have a high ceiling and get injured. Now you have to go through a different type of development. So I'm sure sometimes it's a lot more of a jigsaw puzzle than just plug and play. With that being said, what is it about this job and this position that you enjoy the most? Because, you get to interact with everybody at every level, but what do you really like about what you do in your day-to-day responsibilities?
Honestly, I would say the most enjoyable thing for me is watching, players achieve their dreams from, the Dominican all the way up into the big leagues. Just watching guys like Jordan and Jeremy Pena, Luis Garcia, a lot of these guys, when I met them were at the very lowest of levels and achieved their dreams and, changed their lives, their families' lives for forever. And obviously the hearts of Astros fans and all of us too. So it's fun to kind of, go with them in a sense and really get to follow them on their journey and help any way that I can. And I think that's the most fulfilling part of the job, especially within the last few years.
Yeah, so seeing a lot of players that you probably worked with at some point in the minor leagues make it to the big leagues, not only make it to the big leagues, but reach the goal of winning the World Series in 2022. What was that like as a former manager of maybe some of these guys and maybe of just somebody who's helped them along the way?
No, it was obviously incredible, and to do it in front of the Houston Astros fans, I think is even more amazing. So it was just incredible just to see our guys on that stage, how they handled the pressure, how they conquered the pressure, and just to see how awesome it was that they were ready for it.
So tell me, getting to the Astros, you've been with them for 7 years. How did you get into this? Was this just something that you stumbled into? I know you and I talked, or we all talked before. You played college baseball, and then you said you went through Tommy John, and then after that, you decided it was time to go into coaching. But get us up to this point with the Houston Astros. What was it that you really liked about the coaching aspect? Is it just your love for the game that you've always had?
I think the love for the game is kind of where it starts, but I think my love for people and players and developing, life through a game in a sense was probably the other element to it. And when I went through Tommy John as a college player, it made me like look at the game from a different angle since I was sidelined for so long, and it kind of gave me the coaching lens for the first time before even actually getting into the coaching career. I knew it's going to be very challenging. It's obviously a competitive industry. A lot of people try to get in there and it's tough at first. There's not a lot of money. You don't really make a salary at all to start. And so my journey was, I finished playing. I played at St. Louis University. It was a mid-major Division I, and University of Central Missouri, which is a top-end Division II school. Finished playing, and I interned at a place called Baseball Info Solutions, which is now called Sports Info Solutions, which does a lot of data for all sorts of various sports programs. And throughout that process, really kind of focused on the Astros actually during a time period where wins weren't there yet. So it was awesome to kind of see where things were starting to evolve. And from that standpoint, I always wanted to work in professional baseball, but I had to get my coaching career started a little bit. So I coached at 3 colleges: Heartland Community College, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and Ohio University. And then I started out as a development coach with the Quad Cities River Bandits in 2017 with the Astros. And then in 2018, I was the manager of the Tri-City Valley Cats. And then 2019 became a coordinator and stayed in this type of role since then.
If I could real quick, Eric, I was just going to ask him to talk about your paper that you wrote for your master's. You wrote it on the Astros. I mean, gosh, that's somewhat inspirational. If we got a young baseball player or someone who's a young baseball mind, you can get into baseball just with your knowledge. You don't necessarily have to be the most talented person on the field, but there's a place for you if you're able to write, if you're able to put that together. What was that like? What did you learn about the Astros organization in those lean years, as we call them?
Yeah, so I did my master's degree in the 2013-2014 school year, while going through Tommy John, and I had to finish with an internship. So that's when I worked for Sports Info Solutions, and a lot of my job was like kind of following minor league games, charting major league games, doing all sorts of different things from a data perspective. And I kind of noticed that defensively the Astros were saving a ton of runs via the shift, which was probably the very first domino that I kind of started to look at. And this was during a time where people were debating if the shift even works, and it was like, all right, well, the Astros are shifting the most at the time and they're saving a lot of runs with it. But, because there wasn't a lot of wins quite yet, it was, maybe not as popular of a thing to kind of go on. So that was probably the first thing I started to look at. And then I kind of started to dive through, different minor leaguers coming up, different ways that they were developing players from a player development lens. And I started to kind of piece it together and realized that there wasn't many other organizations, if any at all, that were kind of going under the mindset of that. So to complete my master's degree, I had to finish my internship with a paper. And that's when I just decided to choose that topic and why I thought, the team with the least amount of wins in the major leagues would soon win a World Series. And that was kind of the main premise of the paper.
Nice.
Okay. Going back to spring training, I've always been curious. Like, how maybe on split squad days you have the guys coming up from minor league camp, the ones with no names on the jerseys, the one with the high jersey numbers. How do those players get decided? Is it somebody like you who just gets decided, or does the manager decide who gets to come up, or how does that process work out?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of different factors and a lot of different people. And a lot of it is usually based around which major league players are playing that day, how long are they going to play, kind of working backwards off of an opening day schedule just to make sure that the guys are ramped up, ready to go. And so then we kind of just fill in the blanks. So, if we notice that, like, all right, this player is only going to play 5 innings at second base today, all right, we need somebody to play the last 4. And so then we'll go through different options of guys that we have, and we'll kind of attack it that way. Sometimes it can be, trying to get some of our AAA guys more at bats during that time. Sometimes it can be getting some of the younger guys experience and just be in the dugout with some of the veteran players. And so there's a lot of different factors that go into it. There's a lot of different people that we kind of collaborate with, and we do it every single day. At the end of each day, we kind of go through the upcoming few days. What's changed? Does somebody need an extra day of rest? Does somebody need to move up a day? Obviously things change. If rain's in the forecast, that can change things. And, there's all sorts of different factors that kind of come along. But yeah, it's a combination.
It's funny because you talk about rain delays. I'm actually a native from Florida. I actually was born in Melbourne, Florida, and going back there almost every summer my whole life, it was every time you're there, especially in Central Florida, it may rain for 30 minutes 2 or 3 times in the day. And so that's an interesting aspect. So I wouldn't bet on, whether a game was going to get rained out or not. Wait till that moment. And since I'm talking about betting, I want to talk about FanDuel, because coming up this weekend, you're going to have your Super Bowl party and you're going to need America's #1 sports book. That's right. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's perfect, because they have more ways and more features to get you involved and make it fun and easy. Download FanDuel right now, and you'll get and if you bet on Super Bowl 57, you get a no sweat first bet. That's right. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So you almost get rewarded for not winning. Kind of odd, right? But it works. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. And a person that will not be scoring a touchdown anymore is Tom Brady. Maybe there's some props bet if Tom Brady will show up in a cameo appearance during the Super Bowl, but you have to go to FanDuel to check that out. Their sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. If you go to FanDuel today and you join, go to FanDuel.com/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Jason, we have brought you on, and hearing you talk about this stuff, Eric, that was an excellent question, asking, like, what's involved in putting together the roster, because when it comes out, there's sometimes you think, okay, this guy is coming in, this guy's coming in, you have non-roster invitees. You get looks at like Joey Luperfido, who I think is going to just make some moves this next year in the minor leagues. You've got Cesar Salazar, another catching prospect that's out there, Barry Hill. When you're out there and you're working with these minor league guys, when you're working with these major league guys, is your focus is literally on their development and getting them from point A to point B in spring training, or is it just getting them in condition for for playing?
So it's a combination of things because, this is the one time, in the whole calendar year where we have every player in the same place at the same time. So it's very challenging from a scheduling perspective, but it can be a great time for not only building them up for the season, which is probably the number one goal, but number two would be, developing their routine for each day to maximize what they need to do to become an everyday major league player. And that's the goal for us as coaches. It's the goal for them as players. And so it's a combination of how can we balance both of those elements inside of each spring training day.
So I'm guessing you're going to have a pretty big say-so in where these guys end up at the end of spring training, whether it be AAA, AA, single A, that type. And how
Yeah,
does
it's a
that
combination.
conversation go? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination of quite a few people. But yeah, we meet, all throughout, the calendar year really, and we talk about our guys, where they're at in their development plan, what's the most beneficial for this player at each level. And we kind of work backwards off of that. A lot of it can depend on the major league roster, the last person who gets the last spot and the trickle down effect that may cause.
And that seems to be one of the more intriguing, I guess, discussions in Astros baseball land and all, Astros social media, is who's going to get that last spot, or who are the two guys remaining, and who's on the bubble. We've talked at nauseum about Lee and Diaz and going after that backup catcher role, and like who's going to win that out, and at what point is Pedro Leon, is that switch going to be flipped hitting wise, as Elvis Rodriguez would say, and just really show out to be the 5-tool player that he is. But I want to ask you about the minor league system, because the minor league system has gone from ranking last to up to 26 now, according to Major League Baseball, I believe. And I know that the Astros have done trades. I know there were a couple years where we had some picks that we weren't allowed to make in the first and second round 2 years in a row. And those things definitely deplete your system. What is it y'all are doing right now to rebuild this foundation? Because Dana Brown comes in with this reputation of developing players and putting, getting good players. What is y'all's focus from your end to getting this minor league system up in maybe the top half of Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I think a lot of those rankings, are based on signing bonuses and top end picks. And, honestly don't see our system anywhere near the bottom. It's my personal belief. I feel pretty strongly about it. And so I think a lot of our players, even over the years, haven't got the credit that they deserve at all levels. We could talk about 5, 10, 15 of our major league players that, when they were in these levels, they weren't even ranking towards any ranks, So I think first it's public rankings, and I understand that a lot of them are based on signing bonuses and things, which I completely understand. But from what we look at and what we believe is, we believe our system is stronger than the public might think, and I'm excited to see a lot of these guys prosper in their careers, like many of our others have throughout the last 5-10 years.
So I know there's a lot of names on, like, I'm looking at the MLB Pipeline's top 30 list. Is there any prospect that just comes to your mind outside of people that maybe have already made their debut? But is there any guy that's just you're excited for when they make their debut? I mean, I know there's millions of them, or maybe not millions, but a whole bunch of them that you would like to see. But is there anybody that's just you're excited for them to make their MLB debut at some point in the near future?
Yeah, so honestly, on those rankings, I'm not even really sure who falls in the public top 30. So it's tough for me to gauge. But honestly, when any player that we have makes it to the major leagues, it's for me like almost like a celebration. I kind of look forward to it each night, like waiting for their first at bat or their first innings pitched, and whatever it might be. And it kind of is like a holiday for many of us coaches who have known them since the day that they were drafted or signed internationally. So really, it's like any of our guys when they make it, for me especially, like the lower round guys or the lower signing bonus guys, I think it's something even more special for those guys. And so really any of them. I think, even obviously guys that we've traded, for many of our major league players, and other teams, for us that we look at them like family members. For me, I don't have kids, so these to me are my family. So for me, it's really any of them.
Yeah, and that would be tough to pick out just like one or two because you
Yeah.
have a connection with all of them. But I agree with you 100% on the rankings because Eric and I we've actually talked about it on this show about how if you look at Garcia, if you look at Valdez, if you look at Pena, if you look at Chas McCormick, I mean all these players that have come, Hunter Brown, you know, and players that haven't even got to the major leagues that are still making big moves that don't get talked about. Those rankings, as we understand it, have always been about those signing bonuses and stuff. And I like your focus, and I like how you automatically went to, well, that's great that that says this, but we know what we have. And I think that's what separates the Astros from other teams. I think teams like you, I think the Braves are right there. Not every team I think has it figured out. And I'm not saying the Astros are perfect at it, but you guys got a pretty good system because every year we get minor leaguers that pop up. And I mean, I'm excited about Joey Liperfito. I keep talking about him because the two or three conversations I've had with different, minor league people is they're like, that kid's probably going to end up at least in AAA this year. And I'm like, wow, like he's making a jump. This kid helped lead Duke to their first ACC title that they ever had. And just, I've heard great things about the kid. Now, once a season gets started, you said you go around from field to field, you go around and you're looking at training programs. Are you more dialed in on guys that are struggling, that you're trying to get them to move forward if they're not progressing? Maybe somewhere in their progression, maybe they flatline a little bit, or maybe they're struggling at the plate, they move up a level, or is your focus on, I guess, all of them?
Yeah, I think going into each affiliate, there's 25 players roughly. Some affiliates are allowed to have up to 30, and I mainly work with position players as my top priority. So then you kind of split it in half, and you're working 12, 13 position players. So honestly, during my trips, I feel like I have enough time to get and understand all of them where they're at. There's a lot that I can see from afar via video and data. So even when I'm not there, I feel like I know them and what's going on pretty well. I communicate with the coaches pretty regularly, and that gives me a good sense of what's going on before I can actually get there. And then it's just supporting the coaching staff any possible way that I can, any way that they need me. And I think that there's enough time throughout the trips to not just focus on a handful of guys, but actually reach each of them.
Yeah. So just looking at just one name that I keep on hearing about, I believe he was just drafted last year, is Ryan Clifford. He's the name I keep on hearing about. Colin Barber is a guy that we've been hearing about for a while. Jacob Melton is another one. Justin Durden is another guy. But it seems like the outfield group headed by Drew Gilbert is going to be pretty good for a few years, and not to even mention Pedro Leon, who's going to miss some time. But what do y'all do as a minor league system to kind of get the outfielders ready to play in big leagues?
So it kind of depends. Like we look at everything from a very individual lens. Like we have, what does a typical average major league player look like, and what does this guy currently have? And we kind of fill in the blanks and just make sure that they can be themselves. They can be the best version of themselves, because obviously there's different styles, there's different types of outfielders. So it can really depend. From a defensive perspective, I think we put a ton of value into it. It's outfield defense, I think, is one of the more underrated aspects of defense, and I say that because it's the one position on the field where you can take away triples, home runs, and doubles for that matter, where besides balls hit down the line, many infielders don't have that ability to do it. So I think from a cultural perspective, defense, especially in the outfield, is extremely important to us. And from the get-go, we try to focus on that. And we really kind of look at the each guy from their lens of hitting, lifting, and defense. And where are they in each aspect? Where do they need more work in? And we can kind of tailor individualized plans around those aspects and different types of goals within each setting, so that not all of the players are doing the exact same thing when they might need something different. And so we can kind of create different plans around each guy's specific needs.
You had mentioned earlier that in your paper, I guess the first thing that led you to the Astros was, as bad as they were record wise, they led in DRS and defensive runs saved, and we know the shift is being banned. We know the bases are getting bigger. We know the pitch clock is coming. So with all those changes to the game, I saw an estimate today. It was showing the minor league difference. It shortened the game by 25 minutes. The average only jumped 0.2 of a point, I think, which I don't know if over a season maybe it's a lot, but it was like 247 versus 249, which wasn't as big of a jump as I thought it would be. But do those things play any factor or any role in how you develop? Like, do y'all have to now concentrate on different aspects of hitting, different aspects of, guys, go ahead and keep pulling the ball because Kyle Tucker, there's no shift, does y'all's game plan change, or do y'all still just go with what you trust and just the ball goes where it goes?
I think first and foremost, hitting is extremely difficult. So if we could place the ball each time where the defenders weren't, we'd all everybody would have good batting averages. So I think first it's really difficult to change things just based on a little bit of movement of where the position player is beginning defensively. But one thing I would say that people may not recognize that may make a big difference this year is some of the pickoff rules and the pitch clock and how that may impact stolen bases for certain players or certain teams depending on their style and that type of thing. I think one thing that people may not know about our system is we had the second most stolen bases of any organization last year, and it's something that we focus on a lot. I think base running is a very underrated piece, and it's something that can change a game. And I think that you may see a lot more of that in the major leagues. And, I hope that as an organization, our young guys are ready to do that at the major league level if given the opportunity.
All right. I don't really want to call out names, but as doing what you do, working with a lot of these young players whose goal is to eventually get to the big leagues, they play second base. They play third base. They play right field. Do you understand where I'm going with this? How do you keep them motivated when they know that their position, and for a while it was shortstop as well, where their position is pretty much blocked by players who are going to be here for a while, like Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, those type of positions. But how do you keep those players motivated, saying, like, what do you do in those situations?
So for us, a lot of it is the more positions, the better, because you never know. Like if you look at a player like David Hensley, for example, if he just narrowed in on one position, maybe it's a little bit tougher for him to crack the playoff roster last year. So I think some of those things can be pretty incentivized. Guys like Josh Rojas that we've traded away for Greinke, like those types of players moving around the field to multiple different positions have upped their value to not only crack our major league team, but maybe crack value inside of a trade. So I think that can be a pretty motivating piece to it. I think a lot of times guys enjoy moving around to different positions because there's so many minor league games, and over your career in the minor leagues, if you're there for 5-6 years, if you can bounce around to different positions, a little bit, but still have your main position, it would make them feel comfortable doing it in the big leagues, because at the end of the day, the young guys just want to get there. They just want to be given their chance to prove themselves. And if it's a second baseman who then has to learn how to play left field or wherever, they're willing to do it to help their own careers and help our organization. And our players have, I give them a lot of credit. They've come in with a pretty big open mind to it. And I think it's just, as long as we don't feel like we're sacrificing, their top position, if we feel like we're adding to their position options, I think it really increases their chance to be a sustainable major league player, because you never know, like you might be a major league player at one position and then the team needs you to play another one. And if the first time you ever did it was in the major leagues, it's going to be a little bit tougher. And so, our goal is to make sustainable major league players. And the more positions they play, the better odds that they get.
And that's consistent with what we've heard. Jason, we've interviewed over a dozen of the Astros minor league players, and even some of the professionals, and they all say the same thing, especially position players. Like, I love playing different positions, and it makes me more marketable. It makes me a person that it's not the random Billy Spires who's the one utility guy on the team. Because growing up, when I was watching the game, you had one utility guy right off the bench. You you had your third baseman, you had your second baseman, and it opens things up. And just I love what the Astros do from the player development side. Also with the pitchers, I like when they do the piggyback starts, gets them used to, hey, what if we have a 6-man rotation? You need at least an average of 9 pitchers in a 162 game season to make it through these days. And so all these things are key, and it seems like the Astros are on top of it. I know Eric and I are looking forward to, as long with our listeners, watching what the Houston Astros are going to do, not just at the major league level, but at the minor league level. Jason, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was eye opening, and we definitely are going to ask you to come back. So don't be shy, because we want to know how you're doing throughout the season. We'll check in with you, and like I mentioned off air, maybe we will get to see you in person and snap a picture, have some more conversations. But thank you all for tuning in to Locked On Astros. Remember to make us your first listen, and after you have done that, make Locked On MLB Prospects your second listen. It is a phenomenal show. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep into the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. For myself, for Eric Huysman, for Jason Bell, thank you for tuning in to Locked On Astros. We are so close to pitchers and catchers reporting. And as always, go Stros.
Go Astros.
Go Astros.